Part 31. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 304. So, what is that? Oh, the sun. It was actually blocked. Dragon actor A and B raised their heads, their faces were stunned, and their chin almost dropped to the ground. Their eyes were widened to the limit, and the bulging blood vessels were visible to the naked eye. Cold sweat fell from his forehead drop by drop, but he didn't even dare to wipe it. Deo. A very large island. Judging from the estimates, it is definitely larger than imagined. At least dozens of times larger than the branch island under their feet, where thousands of naval forces are stationed. And the place where such a terrifying island appears is actually it's in the sky. Under the mighty daylight, it's above all living things. It's like the legendary abode of the gods, not to mention if there are any other mysteries, but with this terrifying size, as long as it's a little, something accidentally fell. Its impact on the ground is no less than that of a meteorite or a comet falling to the ground. The two of them stared at the strange situation in the sky, their bodies stiffened into wood, and they did not dare to move, for fear of making a sound. The sound attracted his attention, causing irreparable consequences. Yes, it's him. This kind of scene is definitely a power that can only be possessed by gods. At this time, they no longer dared to go, wondering how he could defy gravity and float in the air, and they were praying in their hearts that he must survive safely and nothing would happen. Once this terrifying island falls, the price will be absolutely unimaginable. Not to mention your own life, even this naval branch will be reduced to pieces in an instant. Lee, left. We all survived. Dragon Suit A and B were paralyzed on the railing, unable to exert any strength. Looking at the giant island that turned into a black dot in the sky in the distance, their faces were filled with joy of surviving the disaster. Scared me. How can something like this happen when you clock into work? I think we should apply to go back to Sci-fi, right? The new world is too dangerous. That's right, fortunately, they didn't notice us this time, otherwise. The two extras looked at each other, feeling the deep fear in each other's eyes. What does the observation report say? If gods appear, the headquarters will treat us as crazy, right? But if not, does this kind of power really exist in the sea? The Dragon Armor Queen was terrified, but at the same time, she couldn't help but be curious. That could lift the power of the continent. And the clouds were light and the wind was gentle, and there was no trace of man-made artifacts. Strength. The well-informed dragon player Yi frowned as if he had thought of something. Floating, island, moving. Golden Lion. It must be the legendary pirate, the Shiki Golden Lion. He is the only one in the world who has the Piaopio fruit, which can make all objects he touches float into the air, and can accomplish this legendary feat. Long Duo Yi danced and shouted. He even knew about Piaopio fruit. It seems that his identity is not as simple as he showed. Golden Lion? Is that the legendary pirate who is as famous as Roger, the Pirate King? Didn't he break his own legs? Didn't he have his arms cut off when he made a fuss about Malinfando? There is such a terrifying power to control such a feat. Dragon Armor couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. Are these remnants of the old era gods? How come their strength is so terrifying? And they are all running to the new world one by one. Can the Navy really suppress this chaos? The sea? Hiding in the corner timidly, eyes full of fear. Don't be stunned. Go and inform the Lieutenant General that the Golden Lion will control the floating island and enter the new world with great fanfare. The headquarters must be prepared. Actor B looked at his teammates, looking like a turtle, and frowned slightly. While urging him, he traced the direction of the island on the map. This direction seems to be the capital of Seven Waters. Looking at the island that has completely disappeared into the horizon, Long Daoi's face was extremely complicated. At first glance, he was a man with a story. Bayou, why do you suddenly want to disperse the clouds covering the island? Nami asked with confusion as she looked at the disappearing clouds on the outer surface of the island. Although she no longer had to face the clouds and mist and couldn't see clearly the outside world, in this way, the floating island would completely appear in full view of the public. It's down. It was covered by clouds before, and the floating levitation was high enough and fast enough, so not much could be noticed, but now it's so dark that anyone who is not blind can see it, right? Nami's ostentatious move made Nami can't help but feel a little worried. Of course I have my own uses. Bayou smiled mysteriously, but did not open his mouth to explain. His eyes were faint, and he could see, hear, and color, taking in all the conversations on the sea. Okay. Nami wisely didn't ask any more, but couldn't help but look at the island. Even though she had lived on it for a while, Nami couldn't help but look shocked. The ground under her feet was nothing else. It was the Fishman Island. Although only the main body was left, it was still 2/3 of its original size. He said that he was not sure and told everyone not to have hope. As a result, he turned around and took the Fishman Island with Nyo. Yeah, went to the sky together. Damn it, God knows how frightened Neptune was at that time. He almost knelt down and asked Poseidon to appear. Even the Straw Hats were stunned. Enel has always been proud of it. The Ark test was crushed into dust under the power that made the continent float. The boss is so powerful, carrying so many people and being so fast. Jinpia looked at Noah, who was staying quietly on the island. His huge body was home to at least millions of his kind, as well as supplies for life. The weight was definitely an astronomical figure. After all, it was floating in the sky. It's not convenient to buy supplies at sea. Along the way, we are rushing under the stars. After carrying so many things, we can still move forward at this speed, which is no weaker than the sunshine mile under normal conditions. What it represents, the stuff is simply terrifying. A tiny bit of power, not worth mentioning. Bayou waved his hand modestly and didn't take it seriously. The true founder of Versailles, Bayou. Damn it! The appearance of Versailles made Fatty Lan and the others couldn't help but clench their fists. If he couldn't beat him, he would definitely have a bag on his head. You know what it means, the anger of a non-chief? Even the boss/vice captain, is no exception. Faced with the envy, jealousy, and hatred of everyone, and looking at the big boss's eyes, Bayou felt very calm inside. He really didn't take these things seriously. After all, the Golden Lion can control more than 10 floating towers, forming a group of floating islands. His Bayou's strength is just to control a Fishman Island with the Piaopio fruit. Isn't that normal? It's only a little bit stronger than a billion, a little bit stronger. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 305. Pour water for the boss. Serve tea to the boss. Fatty Lan covered his chest and forced himself to swallow the rest of his words. Looking at Bayou, who was omnipotent in all aspects and as strong as an animal, he completely gave up the urge to compare. Otherwise, the difference between people, greater than the difference between humans and pigs. So where are we going now? Return to the land of peace. Nami, who was holding Zeus, came over with a curious look on her face. No wonder she was puzzled. The clouds and fog not only covered their whereabouts, but also blocked their view of the outside world. Covering so many days, even the direction of travel, it was all decided by Bayou. He couldn't see the outside world at all. His eyes were darkened and he couldn't even tell where he was, let alone the direction. No, let's go to the capital of 7 waters first. Bayou shook his head and gave another destination. The capital of 7 waters? Did you go there to repair Noah? Although she was a little surprised by Bayou's determination, Nami still saw some reasons from it. Changing the return route and suddenly going to the shipbuilding Holy Land, she could only think of this possibility. Yes, not entirely. Bayou shook his head, looked at everyone's doubtful eyes, no longer pretended, and explained directly and neatly. The first reason for going to the Seven Waters capital is of course to repair Noah. After all, Frankie also said that the environment of the Seven Waters capital is very helpful for Noah's repair. After returning to Wano country, we may not be able to. After finding such a convenient place, there is still a difference between a blacksmith and a shipbuilder. The second thing is for the last piece of red stone. The place where Whitebeard lives in seclusion is not far from the Seven Waters. The time Frankie spends repairing the ship is enough for me to make a round trip. Whitebeard looked like he was taking care of himself. He shouldn't be running around at this time, right? Bayou touched the non-existent stubble and guessed in his heart unreliably. Deputy Captain. Ace couldn't help but scream when he heard the familiar name. There was excitement and expectation in his eyes, but he seemed to be worried about something and hesitated to speak. The considerate Bayou will certainly not let Ace hold it back. He took the initiative to bring it up. When the time comes, Ace will come with me. For Frankie's safety, we must get rid of you, Captain. Bayou squinted and chuckled. Everything was under control. He deliberately dispersed the clouds in the New World to reveal the floating island inside, just to let the news spread to the Navy and pirates. As we all know, it is possible to do this. Of course, the golden lion that ascends to the sky on a large island. Only by developing the Piaopio fruit to the point of awakening can he do it. What does it have to do with Bayou? Don't worry, Bayou. I will definitely protect Frankie. Luffy assured, patting his chest. I won't work hard, at worst I'll just use that thing. Usopp touched something in his arms, his fingers couldn't help but trembled, but his eyes were strangely firm. And there I am. 3 swords are in hand, and the sword's intention is awe-inspiring and can penetrate everything. In society, I am Brother Suo, and people are ruthless and don't talk much. I will tell the mere Qinghai people that the dignity of God cannot be violated. Enilu's whole body was flashing with lightning, and he had his hands folded across his chest, with a look of arrogance. However, the concern in his eyes could not be faked, and it fully explained what it means to be an arrogant middle school boy. That's good. Bayou nodded with satisfaction. If he throws the blame to the Golden Lion, at least he won't cause the 5 old stars to take action. If they die, it will attract the Navy to encircle and suppress them. Bayou is still very confident in these companions of his. Thank you, Vice Captain, and everyone. Ace looked at Bayou gratefully, with tears in his eyes. He is not a kid who doesn't understand anything. The vice captain's method of taking him in 2 directions is definitely to take care of himself and give him a chance to go back to see his father. Otherwise, when the danger is unknown, it is the most reasonable way to leave his general-level combat power in the capital of 7 Rivers to strengthen its defense. Brother Ace, don't worry. There will be no problem with me. I am the man who wants to become the Pirate King. Luffy shouted confidently. There has never been a word fear in his dictionary. Just a small thing. Bayou waved his hand nonchalantly. Luffy, Zoro, Enel, it's not easy to deal with a Marine. Besides, the Marines still don't know who they are facing in their hearts right now. Woolen cloth. Above the endless sea. Woo woo woo. The roar of the giant ship sounded continuously on the sea. Thick smoke steamed out from the chimney, like a group of huge beasts puffing out black smoke. Another batch has arrived. How many ships have there been in just a few days? 27 batches, 1,235 ships. Hiss, so many. Spending so much power to deal with a mere fishman. Murloc. Are they worthy of a group of slaves? Of course it's the big devil. It's him. He truly deserves to be the 5th emperor of the sea, and the chief of evil is simply terrifying. Wearing a white mask, a black suit, leather shoes, and a bow tie, guys who look like either successful people or insurance salesmen gathered together and chatted boredly. What's the topic? Are you tired of living if you don't stand guard properly? A guy who looked like a superior came out from the side and looked at his lazy subordinates with a displeased look on his face. Yes, sir. The white masks couldn't help but shuddered and quickly pretended to be serious and responsible. Snort. After snorting coldly, the officer quickly took 2 steps and walked into the big tent not far away. He still has confidential information in his hand and needs to report it as soon as possible. He is not here to enforce strict military discipline. Report. Enter. He stood at the gate of the camp anxiously until someone inside said yes. Only then did the CP chief dare to step forward cautiously. After entering, his field of vision suddenly became clearer, but he didn't even dare to raise his head. His eyes were fixed on the 3 inches below him, and he didn't dare to exceed the rules in the slightest. The respectful look and the arrogant scolding look before were completely different. Inside the big tent, the display is complicated, and every ornament is exquisite. If you put it outside, it will definitely be a priceless treasure. But it didn't attract the attention of the people inside at all. On the round table, 3 old men of different shapes sat around, all looking at the map in their hands. Even when the white masked officer came in, he didn't even let them raise their eyelids. The rustling sound resounded in the big tent. It was so quiet that even a silver needle or even a toothpick dropped to the ground could be easily heard. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 306. This person's status is not low. I don't know if he is from CP1-9, the chief of that column. For a moment, I didn't even dare to breathe or make a sound, for fear of causing their displeasure and causing disaster. Just when he was so nervous that he was about to suffocate, the strange silence finally broke and disappeared. Whatever it is, tell me. The old man wearing a black flat hat stopped rummaging with his hands and lowered his head slightly. There was a power that could not be rejected in his seemingly ordinary words. Report to Lord Wulaoxing. News came from the Navy headquarters that a huge float was found in the New World, suspected to be the movement of a golden lion. The CP chief sat with his head down to report, not even daring to raise his head. Golden lion? That guy who was the same generation as Roger? That lion ghost with the rudder on his head? Didn't he destroy his legs in order to escape impel down, and his arms were amputated in Marine Fando? How dare you be so blatantly arrogant? The 5 old black hat stars were a little surprised in their eyes. He tapped his fingertips lightly on the table and easily blew up the old golden lion. Reporting back to your lord, the information from the Navy is this. A moving floating island has emerged in the New World. It is extremely terrifying in size. It is difficult to imagine that anyone else can do it except the golden lion. The CP elder said honestly, not daring to add any fuel to the fire for fear of saying the wrong thing. Extremely scary. The 5 old stars with flat hats raised their heads slightly and cast their gaze over. It was also the first time for the CP chief to look into the eyes of this legendary being. His pure and flawless eyes reflected his own heart, as if he was suddenly removed from his mind. He looked inside and out. Even the darkness hidden in his heart was completely unearthed. No lies or tricks could be found under these eyes. No, that's right. According to the Navy report from the Navy branch who witnessed this scene, the scale of the floating islands is extremely terrifying, far exceeding the previously recorded floating island groups and comparable to a complete continent. CP Director said tremblingly. No matter how uncomfortable and aggrieved it is to be spied on, the questions that should be answered must still be answered. Comparable to a complete continent. Is the golden lion so powerful? Can he develop Biopio fruit to this extent? The flat hat 5 old star frowned slightly, as if he had discovered something was wrong. A flash of light flashed through his mind, but he always couldn't catch it, as if he was just one step away. Countless lights flashed in his eyes, crazy calculations chased the flash of inspiration. Suddenly, an angry voice sounded, interrupting his thoughts. Golden Lion? They are just remnants of the old era. Roger, Whitebeard, and Locket have all been taken care of by us. What does he mean? In this world, we should think carefully about how to get rid of that damn devil. A trace of cruelty flashed in the eyes of the blonde 5-old star. The left hand that was cut off by Bayou was a hurdle that he could not overcome in his heart. Shame can only be played with blood. This time, this hateful guy must be killed completely, leaving no way to survive. The flat-hat 5-old star narrowed his eyes slightly and moved his gaze to the map again, his eyes full of fear. 35 batches of top warships collected from various places have arrived, with more than 1,200. The cutting-edge weapons developed by Baker Panga are all in place. Scientific troops, cooperating with 300 weapons, new pacifists, ready to attack at any time. Strong men drawn from the Navy and various places have also been re-strengthened and fully equipped. The sentence after sentence came out of his mouth, but the look in his eyes was not at all relaxed. What he faced this time was not a top-notch Golden Lion. Not only was that guy's strength terrifying, but his combat intelligence was also difficult to imagine with common sense. It was completely different from his immature appearance. More than half of the 5-old stars were disabled in his hands, a full 3 of them. It can be said that this is one of the most terrifying opponents that the world government has encountered in so many years. With the power of several generals, the traps laid out, and the 3 of us joining forces, it shouldn't be a problem to deal with that guy. Hearing the strict preparations, the ugly face of the blonde 5-old star finally relaxed a little. With the strength he showed, if you wanted to kill him, the success rate would not exceed 70%. The 5-old stars with flat hats shook their heads and directly told the truth in their hearts. Anyway, there are only 3 of them here, and they have worked together for hundreds of years. There is nothing to hide in private. But if you just want to vent your anger and fight an eye for an eye, that won't be a problem. The fire coverage and strong point kills can kill at least half of his crew. Countless flashes of light flashed in the eyes of the 5-old stars in the flat hat. While tapping the table with his fingertips, he said his judgment lightly. 70% probability? Half the crew. Enough. The blonde 5-old star stood up excitedly. No matter what, it's time to teach that guy a lesson. Otherwise, we really think that our world government has nothing to do with them. No matter what, we must kill his spirit, even if it is jade, stone, all, burn. A fierce murderous intention spurted out from the blonde 5-old star, and the temperature in the huge dying army tent instantly dropped by more than 10 degrees. Just because they are afraid of rats does not mean that they can endure being ridden on their heads to shit and pee. It should be so. Even the 5-old stars who are the most opposed to killing and insist on judicial trials. In this matter, they all sided with this companion who usually has different political views. Blindly retreating will only invite worse encroachment. This group of human beings who have lived for hundreds of years are not so easy to fall into the dilemma of boiling frogs in warm water. Once they sense that something is wrong, the bloody spirit they burst out will never be much worse than the so-called brave men. What's the use of all this? The real owner has never shown up. The gloomy voice sounded, pouring cold water on the 2 people who were full of passion and were about to form a class friendship from top to bottom. The last 5-old star was an old friend, the mustache. After chatting for so long and having so many plans, they are all lurking on the sea, and no one even sneaks into the seabed to gather information. Maybe they have left long ago. The red face was replaced by icy blue, and a sharp cold current spread all over the body. Even talking seemed to spurt out ice particles. Although he was revived, the sequelae of Bayu's ultimate move were not small. Fortunately, his major is telekinesis, which can coerce the body and replace the nerve reaction. If he were a strong person in the three-color hegemonic energy technique, he would probably have trouble even moving, and he would be destroyed directly. After messing around for so long, it will be funny if you don't fight with the air. The mustached mustache smiled coldly, just wanting to vent his dissatisfaction. But unexpectedly, his words came true. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 307. Unfortunately, no one present believed it. Including even himself. Sistine, even if you suffered a big loss from that guy, there is no need to slander him like this. This is an action jointly ordered by the five of us. Do you want to go against the common will? The eyes of the five old stars with flat hats were slightly condensed, and the vicissitudes of life on their faces were extremely serious. Snort. The mustached man snorted coldly and refused to answer, which was regarded as acquiescing to their opinions. The five old stars with flat hats looked at him deeply, and after seeing him retreating, he said nothing more. After all, we are all colleagues. After hundreds of years, we have not seen each other with our heads down. There is no benefit in a quarrel. Rest assured. I have long ordered to monitor the departing ships. Although the CP agency is not powerful, it is still qualified as a spy. There is absolutely no way a ship that big can slip away under their eyes. The blonde five-old star opened his mouth to smooth things over. The enemy is still at the bottom of the sea, and he doesn't want to start fighting among himself now. Not to mention, there are millions of fishmen on Fishman Island. Based on the profile that Baker Ponga had calculated for him, he knew that he would die if the fishmen were left behind, so he would never give up on the fishmen at the bottom of the sea. Bysine was his fiancée. As he spoke, the blonde couldn't help but reveal a mocking smile. Such a powerful guy is still addicted to beauty, and he is still just a child. Kindness. Kind. Beauty. The five-character mustachioed star twitched the corner of his mouth, revealing the coldness inside. It seemed like ridicule, but also contempt and disdain. GGG. The five old stars with flat hats also followed behind and laughed with unknown meaning. The three of them looked at each other and smiled, and the originally solemn atmosphere in the tent suddenly became much more relaxed. Hee hee. A clear voice sounded from the bow of the ship. Ace, who was in a complicated mood, couldn't help but look up. The slender figure stood on the bow of the boat, looking into the depths of the sea. He seemed to have thought of something funny and suddenly laughed loudly. The cheerful laughter heightened the atmosphere on the ship and diluted the gloom in Ace's heart a lot. What's wrong, so happy all of a sudden? Robin couldn't help but leaned over and asked curiously. As the only historian on the ship, Robin, who can interpret the text of history, will certainly not be absent on the journey to find the red stone. In addition to Ace, Bayushi was the only one I brought with me. It's nothing, I just suddenly thought of something worth being happy about. Bayu half closed his eyes, full of smiles. Real. Robin's eyes were a little suspicious. Because of the world government incident, Bayu's mood hasn't been much better recently. It's really rare to laugh so freely. Of course it's true. I just thought that after the world government's ambush was in place, Fishman Island was found to be a white land. All the people inside were emptied out, leaving only an empty shell for them to battle with the air and waste time and energy. In that scene, their expressions should be very interesting. Seeing that Robin didn't believe it, Bayu had no choice but to explain. Poof. Robin couldn't help but burst out laughing. I'm afraid their faces will turn green, you are really cunning. So, deliberately dispersing the clouds and mist to reveal the floating islands inside was also part of your plan, right? Just to pass the blame to the Golden Lion. As expected of a smart woman, Bayu just raised her head. Robin instantly understood the deep meaning behind him, leaned on his shoulder, and smiled foolishly. "You are smart." Bayou couldn't help but scratched Robin's nose, acting very affectionately. "That is." Robin raised his head with an arrogant look, revealing his elegant neck like a swan. The cold dog food was blown randomly on his face. Ace, who was timid about being nostalgic, was in a good mood after forcing himself to eat several bowls of dog food. "It's getting more complicated." If Bayou's speed is beyond imagination and can shorten the time significantly, Ace, who ate dog food until he vomited, would have jumped off the ship in anger and taken the first step. It's not like he didn't know the location. "Hey island, is it that island?" Robin, who was leaning on Bayou's shoulder, seemed to have discovered something, and his eyes suddenly lit up. On the boundless sea, a black spot floated far away. It was an isolated island on the sea. "That's right. That's right there, that's Dad's hometown. Let's hurry up and get there. We're right in front of us." Ace yelled quickly. He couldn't stand these two people more than the cowardice in his hometown, and the endless dog food. "Who is it? Dare to approach the sea area?" A low voice suddenly sounded from the sea, carrying a smell of burning everything. "Huh. Marco." Ace's eyes lit up, and he looked at the familiar figure wrapped in blue-green light, half phoenix transformed and suspended in the sky. He was extremely excited, and he rushed forward with a step of his toes. He skipped the void and drew a red line of fire. "Ace." Marco, who looked wary in the sky, suddenly became excited when he heard the familiar voice. He was completely unsuspecting and fell directly from the sky, facing Ace's direction to greet him. The two brothers reunited after a long separation. They hugged each other tightly as soon as they met. The whole picture was full of gay love and philosophy. Bayou couldn't help but raise his eyebrows, but after all, it was the characteristic of the hot-blooded series. After so many experiences, he has long been used to it. As to went first, "Shall we go too?" "Good." After receiving Robin's consent, Bayou directly used the power of the piao piao fruit, and lightly took her flying over with her tiptoes. Like catkins flying sideways, she landed quietly. Apart from anything else, at least in terms of handsomeness, piao 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 guo is definitely the number one. "Bayou. I didn't expect you to come too. Is there something big going on when you come to see Dad this time?" After seeing Bayou's figure, Marco, who was immersed in joy, finally came back to his senses. His handsome face couldn't help but have a color of worry. Although after Bayou's treatment, his father's body was better, than I don't know how much better it was before, but if we fight head-on, no one knows whether the old injury will relapse. If I can help, I won't refuse. Marco lowered his head, secretly hating his lack of strength, otherwise he would be able to take action on his father's behalf. "For it." Bayou had some astonishment on his face. He hasn't spoken yet, so why is he thinking about thugs? Although he is quite interested in Marco's phoenix fruit. Strengthen your physical fitness, heal and extend your life at the same time. Your recovery power will never disapprove of those who are stronger. Brother Marco, you misunderstood. Actually, we came here this time because we wanted to ask Dad something. Ace explained while covering his face. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 308. Asking about something? What is it? Ace interrupted unexpectedly, causing a look of astonishment to appear on Marco's face. Are we talking about it here? Bayou pointed to the side, with a smile on his face, and said nothing. The edge of a desolate and uninhabited island is not a good place to chat. Hey. I carelessly ignored it. Hurry up, go this way, Dad is inside. Marco slapped his forehead and held it up. He quickly pulled Bayou and the others politely and walked into the island. As the royal deputy, he is responsible for the internal affairs of the pirate group. Of course, he will not be SI and the others are single-minded idiots, not to mention all-rounded, but they are not far behind. If it weren't for Ace's unexpected visit, he would have pulled him away before he recovered. Ace, you've been gone for so long and you're finally back. Dad will be super happy if he knows about it. He, there will definitely be another banquet tonight, so you can have a great time eating and drinking. While walking inside, they chatted excitedly. Of course, the joy of meeting again after a long separation cannot be expressed clearly in a few sentences. A banquet. I also miss the days on my dad's boat very much. Everyone has adventures together, drinks together, laughs together. Ace's happy face showed a look of reminiscence. Ha ha ha. No need to miss it. You can rewatch it soon. Let's go faster, we can give Dad a big surprise today. Marco laughed, patted Ace on the shoulder, raised his head and suggested to Bayou. After not seeing each other for so long, he was very curious about the current Bayou. The young man who could kill Akainu back then. Now, what level of strength has it reached? There was a hint of curiosity hidden in Marco's laughing eyes. As for Bayou who took Ace away, as the eldest brother, it would be strange not to test him. Good. Bayou smiled and raised his head. The clear gaze in his eyes made Marco feel guilty. He was so sincere, but he actually had all kinds of calculations. It was really too much. Come on then. Marco gritted his teeth. After all, he still didn't give up the opportunity to test. After his identity was exposed, not having enough strength to protect him was like setting him on the fire. His younger brother carries the blood of Roger. Marco's eyes couldn't help but deepen. The two looked at each other. Marco's eyes were a little dodgy, and he didn't dare to look at the sincerity in his eyes. As soon as the phoenix fruit opened, he stretched out his wings and soared into the sky like an arrow from a string. After living in seclusion on an isolated island for so long, he didn't just lie down every day, but the fruits of development never fell. So, has it started? Bayou chuckled lightly, and pulled Robin beside him with a thought, and followed him directly. As for Ace, the man is not without feet. He has no interest in philosophy at all. Cracking. A piercing and loud bird call sounded from the sky. It was like thunder and fire, extremely powerful and loud. A fish belly-like, white sky suddenly appeared a strange sunset. Different from the usual fire clouds, this time the color of the glow was tinged with blue, as if it was being burned by something. Huh. It's the cry of the phoenix. Did the eldest brother start a fight with someone else? Everyone is on alert, be careful, someone has invaded the island. A very different cry broke the peace of the village. Many tall figures with extraordinary temperament came out of their houses. In just 2 or 3 breaths, the empty place was filled with people. Watching with vigilance, the green clouds appeared in the distant sky. They took out their own weapons and transformed from villagers into violent demolition workers in minutes. The aura exuding from their bodies was unique only to the strong. Warn the heavens, don't hold back. It is definitely not easy to push Brother Marco to this level. The fruit of ability was vigorously activated, and the domineering energy swept out, and the overlapping murderous intent and blood evil were shrouded in one. If ordinary villagers saw it, they would be so scared that they would pee their buttocks. Who knew that these seemingly peaceful people idiots are actually big pirates who were laid off and re-employed? Boom, a green light passed by and fell to the ground. Before Marco could fully emerge from the flames. Now, fight. The eyes of this group of strong men lit up, and they tried their best to attack behind him. Crazy collision. One sword style broken wolf kill. Meteor massacre. Must kill saber-tooth explosive bomb. Flame bursting slash. The first move was a big move, and all kinds of desperate measures were like a stream of light. The speed was as fast as if it had been practiced countless times. Marco didn't even have time to open his mouth to block it, and he hit them all. For a moment, stars fell like rain. However, the direction is completely opposite to the usual one. Oops, I couldn't stop him in time. Looking at the shooting from bottom to top, which was like a honeycomb missile, Marco couldn't help but feel a thump in his heart. He quickly transformed into a phoenix, turned the wings behind him into ice blue meteors, and tried his best to stop them. Unfortunately, the effect was really unsatisfactory. Nothing will happen to him, right? Marco's heart tightened and he couldn't help but get worried. This was a concentrated outburst of the entire crew. Even if his father was caught off guard and fell into such a trap when he was in his prime, he wouldn't necessarily feel better, right? That guy Bayou, although he heard it is said that he has a record of killing Akainu, but these injuries are not free. Not to mention, they have just finished competing in speed. Marco, who is nervous and worried, can't wait to kill him. Anyway, he has the Phoenix fruit, so he can infinite self-healing. The 81 of the binding Deo breaking the sky. Under Marco's extremely nervous gaze, a huge translucent protective barrier appeared in the sky. The entire sky was within the defense, not only guarding the position in front of Bayou, but even attacks that diverted the direction were not affected. Can escape his scope? Can a defense with such a large range really be able to block it? Perhaps he used the time of blocking to escape with his speed. The nervous Marco couldn't help but guess Bayou's purpose. Boom boom boom, endless attacks exploded in the air, hitting the barrier hard and turning into bright fireworks. For a moment, the sky is red, white, purple, the colors are all dyed into one piece, and the visual effect is very beautiful. However, what is the actual use? Just look at Marco's dumbfounded expression. Such a huge attack, comprehensive it can sink the island. But when it hits this barrier, everything is like mud into the sea. Not to mention breaking it, there is not even a crack. After a ripple, the translucent barrier is like it's as if someone has wiped it, and it has become more translucent. After fighting for so long, is it equivalent to cleaning the glass? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 309. This. Marco looked at the undamaged barrier in the sky and was too shocked to say anything. Judging from his understanding of his father's strength, even in his heyday, Dad would never have been able to do this so easily. The sword light shook down, and a meteor fell from the sky, revealing the slender figure inside. Before his face was clear, he walked towards Marco. Attack, it has no effect at all. Don't be in a daze, prepare to attack quickly, otherwise it will be too late. We fought hard with him, but Dad was right behind us and we must not let him get past us. The world-famous great pirates looked at the weak figure in front of them, and their joints began to tremble. However, no one gave up. Even if they gritted their teeth and shook their hands, they were still squeezing the body with all their strength. They want to use more power to attack more powerfully. Because the person behind them is Dad. Bastard, stop it. This is a distinguished guest on the island, who came specially to see Dad to discuss important matters. What are you guys doing? Looking at his companion who was about to move and glowing with brilliance, Marco's teeth were about to burst. He, who had always been gentle, became extremely angry. Do you want your life? How dare you attack him? Not to mention that he had killed him before. Akainu's slashing attack and the strength he showed just now can scare people to death. These idiots are either stupid or haven't woken up. They know that their strength is incredible, yet they dare to provoke them. Looking for Dad to discuss something. No, Isn't it the Navy that's specifically looking for trouble? The attack that was about to start froze in his hands, and his face was full of shock and surprise. The scene where Marco was running desperately and chasing after him was still vivid in his mind. Now he actually said that he was just here to discuss things. Could it be Marco? Were afraid of his strength and didn't dare to let them take action for fear of being killed, so they made up this lie to save their lives, right? Just when the Whitebeard pirates and the rest were undecided. A red line of fire appeared in the distant sky. The flame slid down, like a meteor falling to the ground. After a scorching heat wave, it finally landed without any damage. Jose, Vista, Bram Anko, Lajo. Ace looked at the familiar figure in front of him and couldn't help shouting excitedly. His face was strange, and he shook the remaining warmth from his body without any trace. Kiriyama's fire-bending ability is good at everything. He can even control the fire element in detail, and he can even use the fire element to gain a different kind of flying ability. However, it is really difficult to use fire to burn without distinguishing between friend and foe. You also have to pay attention to the spread of temperature at all times, otherwise not only will your clothes be burned, but it would be nice if it could be as convenient as burning fruits. Ace couldn't help but think greedily. Ace? Is it really you? Ace. Squinting his eyes, after enduring the layers of heat waves, he looked at the figure falling from the sky. Everyone in the Whitebeard pirates shouted in excitement. Everyone. What's going on here? Is there an enemy invasion? Looking at their postures, even the rough and tumble Ace noticed something was wrong. Brother Marco? Vice Captain. Ace frowned and couldn't help but ask. Just ask if you don't understand. This has always been his good quality. This. Marco was filled with embarrassment and a look of pain on his face. He knows a hammer. As soon as he landed, he was caught off guard by a combination of punches and was stunned. Vice Captain. Is he Ace's new companion? Could it be that what Brother Marco said is true? The chattering and rough voices are simply noise pollution. Bayou is in a good mood, otherwise he would have to use a speech suppression spell to clear his ears. Nonsense. Not true or false. Feeling the suspicious eyes of his companions, Marco was so angry that he threw the table on the spot. That. Then Marco, why are you running so fast? Burning the body of the Phoenix and using life-threatening tricks. Although there was Ace's evidence, I gradually became doubtful. But the suspicion on my face still couldn't go away for a long time. This. Marco's face turned red with embarrassment and he was speechless. He couldn't tell them that he wanted to test Bayou, so he chose the speed competition that he was good at and wanted to see what he was capable of. As a result, she tried all her strength to suck the milk, but she didn't let her go. The flames burned out on impulse, and he risked his life to use his awakened power. Despite this, Bayou still looked leisurely, seemingly floating in the air slowly, but never fell behind a step from the beginning to the end. The strength he displayed was simply astonishing to him. In the end, he was easily stopped, and the Whitebeard pirates teamed up to attack him, but they still looked calm and composed, which made his jaw almost drop. This kind of peerless powerhouse, a top existence, doesn't know how to test it? The more Marco thought about it, the more embarrassed and angry he became, and his heroic face was so red that he was about to bleed. My brain was congested, my face was hot, and my embarrassment was self-evident. I was almost embarrassed. I dug out a 3-bedroom apartment with my toes on the ground. Since it is a misunderstanding, it would be good to clarify it. If we don't fight, we don't know each other. My name is Bayou, although I don't know if anyone knows me, so just treat it as a reintroduction. Bye. You smiled and took the initiative to help Marco solve the dilemma. Marco, who was in embarrassment, couldn't help but cast a grateful look. Repay evil with kindness, good man. Bayou. The deputy of the Straw Hats, the one who killed Akainu. As if thinking of something, a tall figure looked at Bayou and exclaimed. That's right. Bayou smiled shyly and kept quiet. His goal was the red stone, and he was not here to show off. There is no harm in keeping a low profile. Hiss. So young. Can he actually kill the admiral? What a terrible character. The skilled exclamations and compliments, and even the inhalation are just right. At first glance, they are the old atmosphere group. Yep, it's just Akainu. If you let them know that even the 5 old stars were beaten to shit by you and have no power to fight back, then they don't have to kneel down and sing conquest. There is no pressure to crush 2 people against each other. He is just a general. He is considered a hammer opponent. I asked him to solve it with one hand, let alone Bayou. Robin curled his lips in dissatisfaction and muttered disdainfully. If she hadn't been worried about their relationship with Ace, she would have laughed loudly. White Feather has a black line on its head. He shouldn't have talked so much on the boat. How could such a serious girl become like this? Bayou looked at the indignant Robin in front of him, whispering all kinds of dirty words, and couldn't help but fall into deep thought. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 310. Gulala. I said it was that old friend who came to this isolated island in the sea to find my whereabouts. It turned out to be you. The heroic laughter took the lead and sounded like sound waves. Not only the air, but also the space seemed to be affected and shook uncontrollably. Those with lower strength might not even be able to stand in this scene. Unstable. Long time no see, the old man seems to be in good health. Bayou curled up his mouth, chuckled and wiped his ears. He's not a tough man, he laughed so hard that he almost shook the earwax out of his ears. Your strength. Whitebeard, who was dressed in simple clothes, walked slowly on the road. As the distance continued to approach, the eyes looking at Bayou suddenly changed, and the aura that had been restrained in his body suddenly rose, and the pressure of the air was squeezed out. The tiger was in his twilight years. Its power is still there. What's your boy's strength? Whitebeard's pupils shrank, and he couldn't hide the shock on his face. His expression remained unchanged as Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. He was used to seeing large battles, and this was the first time he was so moved. A little gain, just a lucky break. Bayou said modestly with a smile. He narrowed his eyes slightly and was a little surprised by the power that Whitebeard showed just now. He was not strong enough before and could not tell the clues. From his current perspective, with all the strength of Whitebeard's whole body, he is probably able to fight alone. Wullaoxing, it's time for a showdown. Should I say that he is worthy of being called the world's strongest man? Although for this maniac who recognizes his son, it would be more appropriate to change it to the strongest father. Like thinking of something, the corner of Bayou's mouth couldn't stop twitching twice. Is it a fluke? Whitebeard murmured noncommittally. Gulala. I am indeed a remnant of the old era. The world will always belong to your new generation. With your current strength, even in my heyday, you will never be your opponent. You are truly a terrifying brat. Stopping his heroic laughter, Whitebeard couldn't help but sigh, feeling a little less interested in his heart. If the pirate group had not been disbanded long ago and decided to retire and become an idle old man, I would really want to see the new waves in this magnificent new era. What? A human more powerful than Dad? How is it possible in this world that someone is more powerful than Dad? What kind of monster did we just deal with? Oh my God. Whitebeard sighed to himself, and his sons were so shocked that their jaws dropped to the ground. This is Dad. The strongest man in the world, the uncrowned king among the 4 emperors. Even if he is defeated in the war at the top, in their eyes, it is also because of the accumulated injuries in the body and the decline of strength after old age. In their hearts, Dad is definitely the strongest existence, no one. But Dad actually said it himself, in front of them, saying that even if they are at their peak, they are still far inferior to Bayou. Their worldview has collapsed. There, after expelling the power of destruction, you are still at the top of the new world with your strength. How can you say you are a remnant of the old era? Bayou shook his head with a smile and retorted. However, he just smiled and didn't say much about his evaluation of his own strength. There was just some surprise in his eyes. He didn't expect Whitebeard to have such an accurate judgment. Gula so, why did you come back to this isolated island? He couldn't have made a special trip to see me, a bad old man, right? The unique laughter came from Whitebeard's heaving chest, and his vicissitudes of life revealed a look of wisdom. Although he is old, being dim has nothing to do with him. It's not that he belittles himself, it's really with the strength Bayou is showing now, there is no need for him, a remnant of the old era, to join in, which is superfluous. Hey. Ace has been away for a long time, so why not bring him back for a visit? Bayou rubbed his hands and smiled. What bad intentions could Bayou have? He just wanted to show Ace his old father. Redstone? Wasn't that a rubbing by the way? Gulala. Although this excuse sounds very comfortable to me, my stupid son will not have such thoughts when taking risks, so you should tell the truth. Whitebeard stopped the heroic laughter on his face and couldn't help but glare at Ace. Does he still know that Ace? He thinks about taking risks every day and becoming a great pirate. If only he could get homesick so quickly. Hey. Ace's face turned red and he quickly smiled apologetically. Ahem. That's just one of them. Secondly, of course I have something to do and I want to come over to ask you specifically. After his lie was exposed, Bayou's face froze. In less than 1,000th of a second, he continued to speak without any trace. Who is Bayou? It's nothing to be embarrassed. As long as I'm not embarrassed, I'm embarrassed. It must be someone else. Ask. Whitebeard was a little surprised. Could it be that the information Roger left was leaked? Gula. Ask. Before and after, you saved my 2 lives. No matter what you are asking, as long as I know something, I will definitely tell you everything. After hiding the expression in his eyes with a strange smile, Whitebeard patted his chest and made assurances. The crescent-shaped beard rose and fell on his face, and his heroic posture was definitely a promise worth $1,000. Readily. Bayou's face lit up with joy, and he said it straight to the point. Redstone. Also called coordinate history text, we heard from Fishman Island that the piece they originally kept has been donated to you, so we came here specifically to inquire about his whereabouts. Bayou didn't hide anything and admitted it openly. He was not afraid that Whitebeard would use it to tease him after knowing his needs. Not only did he believe in his character, but also his wisdom. An old and strong guy. No one here is a fool. Instead of planning to deceive, it would be more effective to be honest from the beginning. Redstone? You want to go find Raf Drew? Whitebeard's face was slightly condensed, with a somewhat surprised look on his face, and he looked at Bayou with his vicissitudes of eyes. After all, there is one piece hidden inside. The great secret treasure left by the Pirate King, every pirate who dreams of going to sea will never give up. Bayou smiled slightly, and also looked up, without dodging or avoiding. Their eyes met, and after a long time, Whitebeard could no longer hold on and was defeated first. He calmed down the expression in his eyes and gave Bayou a last deep look. Finally, having made up his mind, he returned to his original appearance and slowly spoke. Gulala. I do know the whereabouts of the red stone on Fishman Island. I placed it on this island. I didn't expect that you would be the one pursuing his whereabouts. After the usual weird smile, Whitebeard's calm eyes were filled with some memories. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 311. Right here. Very good. Take us there quickly. After gathering the last red stone, I can finally unlock the map. Robin jumped up and down excitedly, without any sign of his usual composure. This is the last piece of coordinate history text. It has been a mystery that has puzzled the world for 10 years. The great secret treasure left by Roger the Pirate King involves history. The text is top secret. Even if she is not a pirate, as a historian, she can't wait to see the real thing. With Bayou's subtle reminder, Robin could barely suppress her excitement. Ahem. After finally calming down, she realized with embarrassment that the thing had been found. But he had an owner. After all, he is Ace's father, so he can't be robbed by force. Whitebeard Daddy, can the red stone make a rubbing for us? It's just a rubbing, no need to take it away. We just need to observe one. Robin asked belatedly, his watery eyes full of expectation. Goo la la. Little girl Robin, what are you talking about? I owe that boy Bayou 2 lives. Just observing is nothing. What's more, this is just something that the fishmen gave me for safekeeping. Since you know the whereabouts from the fishmen, they must have recognized you. Even if you return this thing to its original owner, you should do it. Whitebeard laughed boldly, not paying attention to the red stone at all. Robin, who was uneasy, breathed a sigh of relief. Goo la la, it seems that you can't sit still and can't wait to see the whereabouts of the red stone, right? If you can't wait, come with me. Whitebeard smiled strangely and walked towards the inside of the village. Robin and Bayou looked at each other. After getting his permission, they dared to follow behind and hurried over. Hee hee. Bayou chuckled lightly, shook his head and followed suit. The group formed a small team and walked on the village path, which was paved with blue bricks, which gave it a unique flavor. He greeted the villagers passing by enthusiastically, and the unique warmth in the countryside made people reluctant to leave. Prepare the food and wine. When I come back, I will have a big banquet and have a good time. Whitebeard's heroic voice came from the end of the path, but before he could finish speaking, he was cut off by someone. The money for the banquet should be advanced from my salary first, right? Marco slapped his forehead and kept holding it. He didn't expect that even if the fleet was disbanded, he would still be able to escape the fate of being drunk and dined on. As expected of a father who had never paid for a dinner treat. It's really a familiar routine, a familiar formula. Goo la la. The unique strange laughter sounded and kept recirculating on the path. Ha ha ha. The captains of each division couldn't help but cover their mouths and laugh. At first it was just in a low voice with some restraint, but later they burst out laughing. For a time, the village was filled with a cheerful atmosphere. What a fascinating text. After walking for a long time, the group finally stopped in front of a stone tablet. Robin couldn't help but exclaimed. No matter how many times he had read the mysterious ancient text on it, he was still fascinated by the new content. She was extremely fascinated. The graceful lines, concise techniques, ancient charm, everything can only be described by miraculous craftsmanship. Is this the last red stone? Robin's face was full of excitement. His body was even more excited. He even couldn't control his voice and started to tremble. Wow la la. I don't know if it's the last piece or not. However, if you are looking for the Fishman Island, it is no surprise that it is him. The white-bearded man who laughed boldly blinked, and a hint of cunning flashed through his eyes. I didn't expect that he could joke with someone like him. Marvelous. Robin didn't care so much. After receiving the confirmation, he turned into an arrow and rushed forward. His eyes were almost pressed to the stone. He gestured with one hand and recorded with the other. He didn't even relax in his mouth. He kept talking. He opened his mouth and muttered to himself, saying something incomprehensible. It was obvious that his whole body and mind were immersed in research, and he had no time to pay attention to the outside world. Forgive me, that's what Robin is doing when he gets involved. Bayou sneered twice and confessed to Whitebeard. After all, this is someone else's territory, so it's a bit rude. Although he, Bayou, killed people, cheated, framed, and deceived, he was still a civilized person. Gula la. It's okay, that's understandable, and that's the only way she can reach this point. The only human being in the world who can decipher ancient texts. Whitebeard laughed boldly, with a look of understanding on his face, and at the same time, his eyes showed undisguised admiration. To be able to survive the O'Hara incident, and to struggle to survive with the name of son of the devil, as a woman, the body and achievement to this point cannot be underestimated. It seems that leaving Ace with you is the most correct decision for me. I would like to thank you for taking care of him during this time. Whitebeard looked deeply at Bayou, the look in his eyes was particularly complicated. With his eyesight, he could certainly see that Ace's strength was no longer what it used to be. He had at least reached several levels, and he was absolutely at the general level. Even more than. We are all companions, so there is nothing I can say thank you for. It is really too disrespectful to say these things. Bayou waved his hand shyly. With so many friends on the boat, he can be said to be the most worry-free. Apart from Ad 1 for being a good guy, Bayou really hasn't seen any other impacts so far. By whoring, not long ago, I had just used Ace's Xiao fruit. Not to mention that someone was now targeting Marco with ill intentions. The figurine collector Bayou couldn't help but feel a little guilty. Goo la la. Whitebeard smiled boldly and didn't say anything else. Lifting the hem of his clothes, he sat casually on the ground, cut off a piece of grass expertly, put it in his hand and played with it, entering into the storytelling mode of an old man. Do you know? This was once an extremely poor island. Because it could not afford the sky's gold, it was ignored by the world government. After losing its protection, it turned into a hotbed of pirates and human traffickers, with killings everywhere. In order to save his suffering hometown, a young man, at a young age, he decided to leave his hometown and go to sea. Bayou thought to himself, of course I know, the original work has exposed your identity a long time ago, and I also know that this young man is you. He used all the money he earned to build his hometown, making himself a poor man. He even had to use his son's money to go to restaurants. Although he was grumbling secretly in his heart, on the surface, he still sat down calmly. After all, he is a remnant of the old era from the previous generation. As a good friend of Roger, he might be able to get some inside information. So fragrant. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 312. The world government seems to be a stable political rule, but it is based on the oppression of heavenly gold. It plunders wealth wantonly and wastes lives, resulting in the destruction of life. It is just for the enjoyment of the celestial dragons. If there is a problem, it will be directly suppressed by the Navy. Compared with burning at sea, killing and looting pirates, this group of world governments that claim to be rulers are the biggest evil party. Parasitizing in the bone marrow, extracting bone and blood wantonly, allowing the pirates to sweep in, highlighting their greatness, justice. Ridiculous justice. Rule. Synonymous with blood. After telling the story, Baybeard's face was extremely angry. His face showed a rare dignified look, his eyes were slightly closed, and he looked deeply at Bayou, as if he wanted to see some clues from him. The worst order is better than the best chaos. After Bayou answered the question, he shook his head and kept silent. Order at its worst, Chaos at its best. Bayou's words were like thunder that shattered the darkness and illuminated the fog in Beard's mind. After muttering in a low voice for a long time, Whitebeard finally came back to his senses from what Bayou said. If you and Roger were born in the same era, you would definitely have something in common. The first thing Whitebeard said when he returned to normal was that he couldn't help but praise Bayou. The guy said, "Bet your life on the new era." Unexpectedly, I just woke up now. Rather than saying it is a new era, it is better to say that he is betting on the new order that will be set off behind it. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be able to see through it even to my death. Whitebeard looked at Bayou in shock. The look in his eyes was extremely complicated. The doubts that have troubled me all my life were suddenly solved like this. It would be really strange if there was no reaction. It's too exaggerated, it's not to this level yet. Bayou chuckled and waved his hand, not taking any credit. He was standing on the shoulders of his predecessors, using the guide to brush copies. There is nothing to be proud of. He is not so shameless yet. Yes, yes, how could there not be? Seeing Bayou's modesty, Beard was almost anxious. As Roger's posthumous son, I always thought that Ace would inherit his destiny. He is the person predicted to be able to usher in a new era, overthrow everything, and recast everything. It wasn't until I was in the war and saw the Straw Hat Luffy that I began to realize that my judgment might be wrong. The Straw Hat Boy recognized by Shanks might be the real one. Thinking of a certain rubber-powered person with missing tendons, Whitebeard couldn't help but laugh strangely. But until I met you. Whitebeard suppressed his unique weird smile, looked at Bayou's face, and couldn't help but become serious. Extraordinary strength, enough to kill Akainu. You are so knowledgeable that even the dragon praises you and regards you as your mentor. He has strong affinity, and the companions around him are all extremely powerful, comparable to the captain's ship. It's scary to grow up. It's only been a few days since we last parted, and your strength has actually reached this level. Even the 5 powerful stars in the world government will only be defeated in front of you. Words of admiration came one after another, and the splendor in Whitebeard's eyes became more intense. Bayou's eyes softened. It feels different to be praised by a man who is at the top of the food chain. Even the flattery is extra sweet. Are you sure there isn't a letter called D in your last name? Whitebeard couldn't suppress the doubts in his heart and asked. The softness in Bayou's eyes turned sharp in an instant. Not only was his face unhappy, but his hands were also ready to move. He suspected that he was Declan? Judging from the character of Luffy and his family, as well as Roger's history of committing suicide. Isn't this the same as, in the world of Naruto, saying that he is similar to Senju Hashirama? Call him a fool in a roundabout way? Do you want to take your life? Where should I start? Bayou looked Beard up and down with a dangerous look on his face. This. Whitebeard's heart tightened when he saw it. He is worthy of being the top of the old era. Even if he is too old to hold a knife, his sense of malice is still superb. He. Fortunately you are not it, otherwise, what you have shown is really shocking. You are simply the chosen one, the one appointed by heaven to usher in a new era. Whitebeard gave a rare laugh. He looked at Bayou with a sneer on his face and tried to save the situation. Of course not. Bayou categorically refused. Pity. Whitebeard sighed regretfully, not knowing what he was regretting. What's a pity? Isn't this good? Bayou curled his lips nonchalantly. He can become stronger just by lying down, but he doesn't want to be called a fool. Of course, because a name that has been passed down through generations. Whitebeard's eyes were blurred and he fell into a state of reminiscence. Name? What name? Stupid and funny. Bayou couldn't help but complain. Whether it was O'Hara's giant Lieutenant General, Garp, and his grandson, or the most famous Roger, none of them could escape these two adjectives. Forward. Of course not, Da clan, also known as the Clan of Change. It is said that 800 years ago, the great ethnic group that existed in that blank history was broken into pieces and scattered around the world due to force majeure, existing in anonymity. Everyone this clan is said to have inherited the blood of their ancestors and are born changers, possessing the power to change the world and reforge a new order. Whitebeard's face stiffened, and he explained with a twitching corner of his mouth. It is obvious that such a high-ranking clan is involved in the world's biggest secrets, but in the mouth of that boy Bayou, why is it so worthless? Also, you're discussed what's going on in those little eyes. Just before Whitebeard was about to explode, Bayou calmed down a bit and nodded in pretending to agree. You can teach me. Overcoming his skewed cognition, he stroked his white beard and laughed, what a slut. Pretend to be a little bit more like it, okay. Nodding your head is a nod, you're erratic and disdainful. What's going on with his eyes? Facing this guy Bayou, Beard felt that all the hard work he had been holding back for decades was in vain. He was back to the time when he was a fledgling, his temper was explosive and he couldn't control it. He. Actually, there is also a terrifying secret within the clan. This is top secret information. I only learned about it from Roger after having a secret conversation with him. Whitebeard directly took out his old money and wanted to win back the victory. Today, if this guy is not impressed, Whitebeard will never give up. I am the strongest officer of the Straw Hats. Author, Super Red. Chapter 313. Horrifying Secret. What secret could there be? Bayou raised his eyebrows with a look of disdain on his face, but secretly he was paying full attention. Old kid, at this age, of course it is to play with him, it is easier to get in touch with him. The question that is too straightforward, the result it won't be as expected. Bayou has already had a plan for all this. As for Whitebeard, with his experience and wisdom, there is a 70% chance that he has seen through it. But so what if he sees through it? If it's different, just play it. Just say what you need to say. In the past life, the cigarette packs had "smoking is harmful to health" printed on it, and no one smoked less. The two foxes, one old and one young, looked at each other and saw the cunning in each other's eyes. The biggest secret of the clan is actually related to the legendary blank 100 years. As anonymity, it contains not only the blood inheritance of that clan, but also. Whitebeard sighed, and his face became unusually serious. The low mood, coupled with his rich voice, gave off an inexplicable sense of epicness. If it weren't for anime, the BGM would definitely be playing by now. Bayou couldn't help but complained. But, an epic masterpiece. Decryption. Only halfway through, when the key point was reached, Bayou was listening enthusiastically, when a familiar voice suddenly came to his ears. Whitebeard's pupils shrank, and he quickly stopped talking, and the voice suddenly stopped. Bayou! Bayou! Robin's excited shouts were particularly loud in the quiet suburbs. It seems that the last red stone was cracked and completed by Robin. It was really fast. Bayou understood everything as soon as he saw and heard. While they were chatting, Robin seemed to have divine help. Not only did the rubbing succeed, but he also worked hard to solve the mystery with the help of previous clues. He also played hammer chess, and I knocked the chessboard to the ground. It seems that we can only wait a while and talk about this again. Bayou gave Whitebeard an apologetic look. Robin has already endured enough. Whether as a man or as a deputy captain, Bayou doesn't want to put any new pressure on her. Good. Whitebeard nodded in understanding. Just like he often hides big things in his heart, wanting to bear everything alone, crush everything, and support a world for his sons. The two looked at each other, showing sympathy for each other. Bayou smiled freely and leaned forward. Whitebeard did not stop and followed closely behind. What's wrong? Are you not scared anymore when you see me? I thought. A bright white sword light fell from the sky. After seeing the familiar voices and shadows inside, the nervous Robin relaxed. Correct. Bayou, look. The puzzle has been completely solved. We can go to Rafdru at any time, the secret treasure of One Piece is already waving to us. Robin raised the draft in his hand and jumped up and down with excitement. Is this a pieced-together map? Bayou was flipping through the manuscript, and Robin handed him the manuscript with his own hands. After a bunch of unclear words, he drew a sketch with simple lines. It looked like a crappy kindergarten picture, but the midpoint where the four corners of the lines meet, but extremely eye-catching. Yes, it's him. I don't know if there is a blank 100 years record in the great secret treasure. Robin looked longingly into the distance, with longing in his eyes. Fortunately, it wasn't Nami who came with the ship this time, otherwise, there would have been a little thief cat with Pele in his eyes. He was very excited when he heard that the big secret treasure was in sight. Fainting is inevitable. Found it? After staring at the map and comparing it for a long time, Bayou finally managed to identify the position represented by the center point. It seems like he hasn't been fooling around for so long. After running a small stove for Nami for so long, at least she can read the navigation chart independently. It's actually in this place. Looking at Rafdru's location, Bayou had some surprise on his face. It's unexpected, but it's also reasonable. Who would have thought that this place, dubbed the Land of Ending and Land of Dreams, would have all kinds of wonderful colors? The final island of the hidden treasure, Roger, the Pirate King, is actually not located on the sea. It turned out to be a floating island. Just like the Sky Island where Enel is located, it is an out-of-this-world place that is independent from the sea and hangs above the heads of the world. Only in this way is it possible. Bayou sighed with a confused look on his face. What if Rafdru, like ordinary islands, was just floating on the sea? No matter how desolate, remote, dangerous, or uninhabited the place is. In this age of navigation where pirates are increasing day by day and disasters are spreading, they must have been uncovered a long time ago. It can be hidden there until now, and still no news is leaked. Only this kind of island, hanging high in the sky and hidden from the world, can remain hidden in the stormy sea. You have made a great contribution to deciphering the location of Rafdru this time. Bayou happily rubbed Robin's head. Feeling the softness of the hair for selfish reasons, he narrowed his eyes slightly with pleasure. One of the big things stuck in his heart can be solved. All he needs now is to find a chance in private. Ask Whitebeard clearly the secret of a family. You can go back, find your friends on the boat, and start the final adventure to explore this final island, and successfully get the big secret treasure hidden by Roger, and you're done. Bayou nodded with satisfaction at the blueprint he had planned. But, compared to him, Robin's face wasn't that pretty. After recovering from the excitement of unlocking the coordinate history text, the joy on Robin's face obviously faded a lot. According to the Redstone Cracked content, Rafdru is an island located in the heavens, and it is more difficult to get there than to get to Sky Island. Only when the tide surges, the 7 magnetic lines intersect, and the positive and negative poles are reversed, contacting the sweeping tornado, can a short passage be formed from bottom to top. This kind of astronomical wonder will only happen once in at least 20 years, and the last time was just over 10 years ago. It will take at least several years to wait for it to form again. Robin couldn't help but show a gloomy look on his face. Several years. That's right, it will take at least 3 years. Robin couldn't help but sigh. She knew how much Bayou cared about Rafdru. It is even very possible to use some of the beings in the great secret treasure to fight against the world government that is now eyeing them. After 3 years of planting, the daylilies are already cold. Time now, every second counts. Why is it in heaven? Robin felt sad and couldn't help but complain.